at the start of the 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women and Children, we have a chat to the CEO of POWA about their call to pressurize the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in fast-tracking the bills into law. We have a chat to Mary Makgaba, who's the CEO of People Opposing Women Abuse, POWA. You're listening to your social newscast with me, Sam Marshall. We know that the president, in the various speeches during the COVID period, highlighted gender-based violence. On the 15th of October, he talked about the 5 days. But you're not happy with the president and the speed at which they need to fast-track these 3 new bills. Tell me why POWA is not happy with the president.
Given that we have got the high prevalence of GBV, gender-based violence and femicide, alarming in our country. We are not happy as an organization, and we are so disappointed because more often we know how government operates, particularly parliament, in terms of turning the bills and passing them into law. It can take 2 years or so many years. Hence, when we look into the femicide patterns and the trends, they're very worrisome. And as women in this country, being POWA, people opposing women abuse, representing women, we feel like we need to advocate for the rights of women, particularly those who are not protected, including all of us. Let me just say not victims, because as women, all of us, we are at greater risk and we are becoming more vulnerable. So it is very important, our call to action, because we wanted a petition during the 16 days of activism that must be handed to the president of the country, President Cyril Ramaphosa, because we are tired of these bills, being there, just there, but now perpetrators are walking out on bail because they've tightened. If you look into the 3 bills that are there, they've tightened, for instance, granting of bail for the perpetrators, and victims got some other additional rights, because in the past, when you look into the Domestic Violence Act, particularly, and the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Bill, you find that in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act as well, that, the accused have more rights than victims. But legislative reform, we supported it, we are happy with it, but the only thing that we need now is those bills to be passed with immediate effect, to be fast-tracked, because we wanted to deal with GBV, we wanted to see GBV statistics going down. That is the reason that we are calling out for action, because we cannot continue and having larger statistics providing ongoing care and support to the women, in our shelters, whereas there are certain endeavors that we can make so that this thing does not prevail.
Unpacking and talking about the bill, Mary, the president was quite vocal that gender-based violence needed to end. He was public about it, but POWA is not happy with the speed. And many would argue that if you look at the 3 bills, that they're touted as 3 new bills. Some of these laws already exist. And these bills are really just trying to expand on the current law that's in place. So, for example, if we go through the 3 bills, it's not an actual fact 3 new bills.
Yes. If you look into the bills, I strongly concur with what you are saying. It's just that extension of certain provisions and clauses. You look into the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill, they just added only to say, if you are engaged, you are dating, you are in sexual relationships, customer relationships, just making the additions, you are right. I strongly agree with you.
If we're talking about the Domestic Violence Act, the other added change to it is that the definition of domestic violence is also extended to protect elderly from abuse by family members. If you look at the bill to amend the criminal law, one of the extension is to include the public naming of perpetrators. A lot of the others already exist. If you look at the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Bill, it talks about tightening the granting of bail, as you've mentioned before.
Correct.
But many would argue that what the law actually is going to do is solidify, because up to this point, it was really based on the evidence and based on the whim of the judges.
I strongly agree with you. Those 3 bills have been passed, yes, but if you want to critique them, they still have some gaps. Like you're saying, some loopholes. You look into the legal representation of women, particularly, maybe by Legal Aid South Africa during a court appearance. Some of the things are not there. It was just an amendment of certain definitions and just some few additions in terms of certain provisions. I strongly agree with you with what you are saying.
So if it's only a couple of additions and amendments, why, in your opinion, in your expert opinion, is President Cyril Ramaphosa taking so long? Because he has been talking about these three new bills or the amendments to these bills as far back as 2, 3, 4, 5 months ago, as far back as a year ago, and yet nothing has happened.
It looks like they're breaking their feet, but we need to work with them. Remember, government, they cannot work alone because we need to also assist. But in terms of fast-tracking the process of the bill, it's not on our side. We cannot say it's a campaign, wanted to create more awareness, wanted to do advocacy, wanted to do research. What I could make an indication is that we need to push as POWA to make sure that in partnership with Joko, that we do those voice petitions, so that we can send to the president so that they can fast-track the issue of the bill, because women are dying every day. It could be me, it could be your mother, it could be your grandmother, it could be your aunt, it could be your neighbor. So we want them to be fast-tracked. So though some few loopholes are still there, but it's better than nothing. Half a break is better than nothing. We are going to make sure that we together with Joko, we continue with our campaign and make sure that they are held level, and then those bills are passed into law with immediate effect. We don't want 3 years or 4 years or 3 years waiting. Whereas we see the perpetrators working with us on the street, and we don't feel safe as women. Our children don't feel safe in public spaces, recreational facilities, and everywhere.
Mary, when you talk about a timeline, what timeline are you giving the president? Because on average, it takes 153 days to pass a bill, with a lengthy 96 days from adoption to assent by the president. What is your deadline to the president?
I cannot speak for now that I have a deadline, but when we say speedy finalization of the bills being changed into the law, remember we are still in COVID in level 1 lockdown. Remember, when a bill has to be changed in law, there are some further consultations that have to be done, particularly when we look into women in rural communities and other people who cannot have access to information. It will need things to be published in different official languages, for indigenous languages, for other people to be able to understand. What I'm saying, when we are saying now, we are saying that it must not exceed more than 6 months.
Your call comes at a very difficult time, not only in South Africa, but globally. We have never had to face a pandemic like this. We've never been, as a country, in a lockdown.
Yes.
What's the current situation on the ground? Because the moment we went from one level to another, we started hearing horrific stories of femicide and gender-based violence. As a leader, what's the current situation on the ground? And have we been able to step this back? President speaking out and various leaders like yourself speaking out, has it made a change?
Yeah, the current situation is, if you become honest, South Africa is one of the highest, particularly. Femicide is still high, GBV is high. So I cannot see that we have seen the difference if you can look into the current statistics of what is happening. But my view is that if this bill can be changed into law, remember if you look into the Criminal Law, Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Act, there will be public naming of perpetrators, so that in future they jeopardize chances of further employment, where they'll be registered in the National Register for Sex Offenders. Would have loved that it could take 2 months for them to pass them, or not more than 3 months to pass those bills into law. But given that we are in COVID-19 pandemic and we are still having some challenges in doing some of the things, it is very, very difficult. But remember, we have the NSP, National Strategic Plan on GBVF, which is also having some of the gaps, in terms of accountability, in terms of resource mobilization for civil society organizations, because government alone cannot fight gender-based violence. But it looks like we've been excluded in terms of the budget of allocations for all civil society organizations, so that we can help each other in terms of the budget that will be allocated. The current situation is that in terms of GBV, it's us talking and talking. It's all over, it's happening. Currently, I cannot say that we have a solution, unless otherwise the 3 bills are now turned into law, where the perpetrators are facing the full mighty of the law. Granting of bail with strict conditions, complainant being given the opportunity to say something before the bail is granted, additional rights that are given to victims. If we see it happening, then we'll be happy as an organization as people opposing women abuse.
You're talking about government can't do it alone. You are, as an organization, quite an influential organization in this space. We've seen public interventions, we've seen the media jump on this bandwagon, and you're saying to me in this interview that gender-based violence is as bad as it was last year, then what's the benefit of pushing the president to amend this bill? Because we know a law in itself won't change behavior.
Yeah, I strongly agree with what you are saying, but it's very, very important. We recognize those laws. We need them to be implemented. Those bills need to be turned into law. Remember, some of those smaller additions and amendments are very, very, very important, particularly for tightening the granting of bail in cases of GBV and femicide, as well as expanding offences for which minimum sentences must be imposed. It is very, very important. The issue that we need to continue preaching is behavior modification or behavior change. As people opposing women abuse will continue to become change agents in South Africa and make sure that we are doing sector strengthening. Currently, as I'm speaking, going to all the 9 provinces, working with the criminal justice system from SAPS to NPA and other civil society organizations to create awareness. The changing mindset is very, very important. You are right, we can have more bills, more laws, bills tending to be laws, but if people, the mental health or people, they don't change their attitude, their mental attitude, particularly men, because we are fully aware that men are perpetrators of gender-based violence. They need to assist us, other men, so that we can fight gender-based violence.
Final question from me. Paint a scenario for me, Mary. Where are we heading to if we can't curb gender-based violence? And if we have leadership, and I'll give you a practical example. A couple of months ago, a young journalist was pushed around by EFF members. If we have political leaders talking out of both sides of their mouths, where are we heading to as a country if we can't curb gender-based violence?
Hi, as a country, if I can say where you are heading, I see that we are going to become a country where there is going to be war coming to South Africa. If every day you sit down and watch TV, there are so many cases that are happening, particularly to GBV. Politics is GBV, it's happening. It's so sad that, political leaders, where we need to think that they are setting us role models. They're still doing these things, thinking they are in power, they are in control. You see, that is what you are saying when the journalist has been pushed. As people opposing women abuse, we condemn incidences of those kinds, but it's very important that the political leaders, they must be capacitated, reskilled and retrained, mentored and coached. Maybe they must go for leadership courses and leadership training so that they understand, and they must have emotional intelligence. They need to understand whatever that they are doing, they have to face the negative consequences, because nobody's above the law. Whatever that happens, yet we are seeing that our country is thinking in terms of GBV. Let it be reported, because as an organization, we are not going to sleep and say, no, we are not winning. Until we have a win-win situation, we'll continue to spread the gospel. We'll continue to create awareness. We'll continue to mobilize people, make sure that, like, for instance, currently as I'm speaking, on Friday, we are marching as people opposing women abuse as part of 16 Days of Activism of no violence against women and children. We are marching to the NPA and to Advocate Shamila Badoy. We will be handing a memorandum. We are also marching to the Minister of Bekitele, SAPS, to hand over the memorandum to the two of them on Friday. We are not going to lose hope. We are going to make sure that we protect our women here, we protect our girls and everybody in South Africa.
Mary, thank you very much for your time. And I know POWA has been such a formidable ally to women and the fight against GBV. And I know that you guys are doing a ton of advocacy work in this space, and hopefully the president, through this call, through getting people to send voice notes directly to the president, you guys will facilitate, will at least in some way get him to understand that talk is cheap if there's no action.
Yes. And we need people to add their voices. They can simply go to joko-addyourvoice.uwina.com. joko-addyourvoice.uwina.com. We are partnering with Joko. Joko wants to make a real difference to the lives of all South African women, so that hashtag we can end domestic violence.